Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Meeta Sahni, and you're here with me and Tosh Polpitiye. Hi, Tosh.
Hi there, Meeta. How you doing? You all right?
Very well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for giving your time over to our webinar. We hope you find it useful. These are the Q&A sessions guiding businesses and not-for-profit organizations through the business hysteria around the coronavirus crisis. We asked you today for today's webinar what you wanted to hear and what information you needed. And from that poll, we've chosen the 3 topics. So the 3 topics we're going to be covering today are the rights of employers and employees in this climate. So people are furloughed, people are working from home. What are the rights of both parties? We're then going to be talking about the business support and the financial support that is out there for organizations at this time. And finally, we're going to be summing up with furloughing. And we've done a lot already in the last couple of sessions for those that attended around what it means. But I think we've moved along from there. And what we're going to be talking about now is what new information there is around furloughing so we can understand how to use it as a tool for our organizations at this difficult time.
You know, the purpose of me and Meeta doing this series, this is part 3 or 4, by the way, and it was designed to help employers and employees and people dealing in the current climate sort of filter down the wealth of information that's out there for furloughing, redundancies, just basically anything to do with what's happening in your lives right now. And obviously, Meeta, for those that know, Meeta is a recruitment specialist, talent management specialist, and I'm an employment law solicitor. So with both our expertise, we thought that would be useful to sort of share information with you and continue to do this. As I say, this is part 3 or 4. And this particular one, we just asked, what do you guys want to hear about? What is it that matters to you? We also do a follow-up video, which answers each and every single question, because we won't get a chance to do them all in this session, which is going to be about 30, 40 minutes, just depending on how the Q&A goes, right?
Well, I'm pleased to say we already have some questions coming in, and that's where this session becomes really useful, is when you're asking the questions and we can give you specific answers as well. So with 30 to 40 minutes on the clock, Tosh, shall we jump straight into the first one?
Yeah.
So I know that for my organization, I'm not only here as a talent specialist, we've got to think about how we function as a business and as an organization in this difficult time. So I've got people that are furloughed, I've got people that are working, we've got clients and network and stakeholders that we're trying to engage with and keep some semblance of functionality. I mean, can you give us some insight, Tosh, into what are the rights from both sides to ensure that organizations and individuals have the right guidance and support going forward?
There's so many things to consider, really. Well, the first thing I want everyone to realize is that employment rights do stay the same at this time. So the rights to be unfairly dismissed, if you're just firing people and they've been there for more than 2 years, they're entitled to claim unfair dismissal if that's not done correctly. All the other rules still apply. It's getting complicated because people are using words like furloughed or leave of absence, or there's all sorts of things changing day by day, quite frankly. Even, you know, us as employment lawyers, it's a nightmare to just sort of keep up with it and also filter that through to our clients and the people that want to know. So in terms of what the key rights are for employees at the moment, it remains the same. You have the right not to be unfairly dismissed after 2 years service, and you're entitled to full pay if you're ready, willing and able to work, unless there are different circumstances that mean that you don't get that full pay. Those circumstances as an employee might be if you're on sick leave. If sick leave is the primary reason you're off and you've got a sick note covering that, you're entitled to statutory sick pay or whatever's in the contract. If you're off because of maternity leave, you're only entitled to your statutory maternity pay in the normal way that you would while you're on maternity leave, unless the company gives an enhanced payment, in which case that enhanced contractual amount could be included in the furlough scheme. I'll go into the furlough scheme in a minute.
I can furloughing coming in, but we'll try and link it to the rights around furloughing, because that obviously is a new position for people. I know holiday has been one of the questions as well. Yes. Are employers within their rights to ask people to take holiday at this time?
So I'm going to get to that in a minute. What I thought I would do is I'll just do a quick overcap on the employees' rights, a quick overview of employers that might address some of those questions, and then we'll get into the details, right? So the other thing is employees are entitled to obviously request holiday leave. At the current time, that will be full pay for the first 4 weeks. Anything after that will depend on what the contract says and those sorts of details. From an employer's point of view, what is it that an employer can do? So can an employer furlough an employee? Well, to be eligible to be a furloughed employee, they have to be on your PAYE from that date, from the 28th onwards. And you have to, as a company, have an online PAYE system. If you don't have that, you should apply for it now. Don't wait. It'll take about 10 days to process. But you need to be on that system to be eligible. You need to have a UK bank account, and you'll have to have written proof of that furloughing arrangement. Employers actually have a lot of things that they can do in these circumstances. So can they make somebody redundant whilst they're on furlough leave? The answer is yes, if there's no work available, if the criteria for redundancy is the same and available, right? Can they force an employee to take holiday? And the answer is yes to that as well, as long as the employer gives twice as much notice as the amount of leave that they want the employee to take. So if they want them to take 1 week's holiday, you've got to give them at least 2 weeks notice of that. Okay. That'll be in writing. What other circumstances are there? What else can an employer do? An employer has a choice, though, on whether to furlough you or not. It's a voluntary arrangement, and that goes both ways with the employee as well. But if you don't furlough somebody who's got more than 2 years service as an alternative to redundancy, that might become an unfair dismissal claim. I know that's very complicated, what I've just chucked out there, but there are lots of rights on both sides, but effectively, it's the employers that need to determine what is the reason that that employee is not at work. That will then decide whether it's sick pay, holiday pay, or furloughing, or whatever else it is.
Okay. Thank you, Tosh. So we have some questions coming in, and I'd like to be able to answer some specific queries that are out there at the moment. So this is a basic question around furlough payments. So can you
asking the question, Meeta?
So this is Vivian. Vivian is asking, can we confirm whether tax, NIC, and all are taken from the furlough payments? So my understanding is, and this is from an employer perspective,
yes,
that the government support everyone up to £2,500. Now that £2,500 includes the cost of employers' NIC. So if you only want to spend £2,500 on your employee who is furloughed, if you're not in a position to top that up to full salary, if the salary is above 2,500, please make sure when you calculate that you do incorporate the costs of employers' NIC and pension into the 2,500, because the 2,500 is the cap on that. In terms of what the employee gets,
80% or 2.5%, whichever comes first.
Yeah, so whichever one is the lowest.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, and then from an employee's perspective, all employees are subject to tax on the furloughed payment that they receive.
It includes that, yes. Yes, it's
so that was Vivian's question. So yes, tax and NIC are taken from the furlough payment.
Yeah. They're paying. Actually, it's a bit of an odd question, because in the sense that you have to pay whatever you're paying normally anyway. It's either you've decided to pay full pay and then you're reclaiming 80%, or you're paying what they would be receiving as a reclaimable amount, which is the 80%, which includes NIC and 3% auto enrollment for pension, right? So it's kind of they're taking it. It's already been taken.
Yeah, it's probably worth also refreshing on the fact that because they're still in an employment contract, albeit a changed status, they will still get their holiday accrual, but other benefits won't be attainable. Is that correct, Tosh?
Yeah, that's correct, yes. The other things are not, but you have to specify that in the furlough agreement.
Fine.
Yeah, the furlough agreement is changing the terms and conditions, how we're operating now. So it needs to spell out in very clear terms. And if they say no, well, then the alternative would potentially be for redundancy. But again, that's an obligation for employers only if the employees have more than 2 years.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a question from Charlene, actually, which is looking really at the rights of employees working at home. And it's around the fact that the company is normally based. So Charlene says, we're based in serviced offices. Is there any help we could get regarding monthly costs, considering we are all working from home? Now, I'm an accountant by trade, although not by practice in years, but I have been reading up about the fact that there are some tax allowances that are available for people working from home, Tosh.
I'm not aware of those. So you need a tax lawyer.
So I can enlighten you, Charlene, on that. For everyone else that's working from home, if you are spending money on setting up your work from home space, you can then submit that in your tax return as costs incurred from working from home. So that is something that you can, but I would say talk to your accountant about that.
Exactly right. It's an accountant's query, and they'll definitely know. There's no question of it, of what you can or can't claim. And I presume you're speaking with them anyway. So they should be saying right now what you should be claiming, how you should be reclaiming any costs that you can, or even submitting costs for employees or what have you. There's also a trade-off, don't forget. If employees are submitting costs, if that's what you're talking about, Charlene, expenses for, I don't know, internet, electricity, portions of whatever it is, cost they're doing in the house, we've got to bear in mind there may be some other savings as well incurred because they're not traveling to work, for example. So it's a little bit of, again, the more specificity you have in the contract or the furlough agreement or whatever you're doing going forward, the better. I suppose if they're working from home, it's not furlough, but it's just understanding what those working arrangements are and what you as an employer need to know that they're doing the job, I suppose, output, productivity, that sort of thing.
Clarity is key.
Yeah, exactly.
So the next question we have is from Simon, and Simon says, if I have furloughed staff somebody... Pardon?
Sorry, nothing. You go.
If I have furloughed staff and someone wants to work for someone else in that period, what restrictions are there around when they can work? They have contracted hours, but they are obviously not working at the moment. And this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because there's an update.
Yeah, it is. I didn't anticipate this. So basically, what the law is saying now, or the guidance is saying now, is that an employee can work for somebody else while they're furloughed. They just can't work or do anything that's revenue generating or work for their employer. So in theory, an employee could get 180% of their pay, 80% being on furlough from the current employer and 100% from the new job that they're doing, which it can be during normal working hours, but it still requires the express agreement of your employer. It isn't just willy-nilly doing whatever it is, because the furlough agreements now have been clarified as being valid for a minimum of 3 weeks. So what employers can do is they can rotate every 3 weeks. So what you don't want to be doing is having a rotation period, but that somebody on furlough is now working somewhere else. Well, that won't work because you can't be obviously 2 places at once. But at the current situation, if they're working somewhere else, there's nothing wrong with that as long as an employer agrees it.
So that in itself could throw up some challenges because, for example, in our world, some of our team have been furloughed, but we look forward to the opportunity ASAP that there is work for them to do and we can unfurlough them.
So there's got to be an understanding that they're available when you're going to call of them. Obviously, if they're working somewhere else during the hours they would have been working for you, I don't know if that starts to cause some problems. So it's just worth thinking about. Yeah,
this is definitely a surprising ruling, I think. But
it is. I think so. I didn't anticipate that.
But with express consent, which is the most important thing.
Correct. Yeah, so yes.
Employers completely within their rights to say no, because again, from an organizational perspective, if people are experiencing other working environments, probably all from home at the moment, that then opens up the potential of losing employees in this process. And we all know the challenge around
the attraction. Reaction might be to say no, but then I think I would say to myself, well, what difference does it make to me? It will benefit my employees to be able to do that. They're only being furloughed anyway. The issue for me is that they need to be ready, willing, and able when I'm ready and able to get them back into work, right?
Yeah, I think what's really evident now is that the conversation is moving forward, whereas I think a couple of weeks ago we were all like deer in the headlights. We're starting to get some clarity, and organizations are finding ways or trying to find ways to keep business continuity going. So what we're going to be trying to do is to keep the conversation around what you all are looking for. And one of those areas is, well, we don't want to lose people in this time. So if you want us to focus on anything, please just put it on the chat and we will reflect and review this chat afterwards as well.
Yeah,
to make sure we're
answering everything. Absolutely.
And we will try and make sure that the advice and guidance is relevant. So that for me, the furloughing and working somewhere else does pose some more challenges, but it will all become clear in time.
So, but the answer to Simon's question is yes, they can be furloughed and work somewhere else during those contracted normal hours.
Yeah, and how we can guide and advice. Yeah. The next question we have is from Simon. So Simon says, I have someone working for us being paid via PAYE, but they live in the Republic of Ireland. Are they still able to be part of this scheme? And I'm assuming that's the furlough scheme.
The answer is yes. If the criteria is met, that they're part of your PAYE, and you have from the 28th onwards, then the other criteria are things like having an online HMRC account, having a bank account, those sorts of things. So assuming you have all those things in place, yes, there's no reason whether his geography makes any difference.
Okay, good. Thank you. And the next question we have from Margaret is about an employee that is coming back from maternity leave. She has asked to be furloughed, which we know we can say yes to, but there's actually a lot of work to do. So we don't want to actually just set a precedent for this employee. How would Margaret manage that, please, Tosh?
You need to make a decision. It's got to be based on, I know that's really unhelpful, but you need to make a call on what is right for your business. You know, if there is work to do and you need people to do work, well, then they should do the work. The question is, can you afford to pay them full pay? If the answer is yes, well, then pay them, because then they're doing their job. If the answer is no, you need to consider whether you furlough them, which means they do nothing, or whether the employee will agree to work at a reduced rate. Question is, why would they if they can get at least 80% through the furlough scheme? So the question is, we have an employee due to come back from maternity leave. We've been asked to furlough. We know that we can. There's still a lot of work to do. So the question is, if you wanted to do work and she's able to do it, then she should do it.
Yeah. Employees don't usually request to be furloughed, do they, Tosh? Usually it's a business would go out to an employee and say, there's no work, therefore, to keep you financially secure, we'd like to put you in.
That's right. It should be the employer that's requesting it, but employees are requesting it now because employers don't know what they're doing. And a lot of the employers that don't know what they're doing, they're going straight into redundancies without considering furlough as an option.
Yeah. Okay, so we have another holiday question, actually, and Simon has asked about bank holidays. So are furloughed staff entitled to accrue bank holidays as well as normal annual leave?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Gillian. Gillian actually is asking about small business owners of limited companies and whether they're going to get help with dividends. And that is a very personal position of my own as well. So I have been talking to my accountant, and I think that is what I would suggest you do here, Gillian. I found out that directors can actually furlough themselves now, can't they, Tosh? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's right. So furloughed directors still need a written agreement expressly confirming why they're being furloughed and that they're receiving 80% of their basic salary, or £2.5 whichever is capped first, you know, the usual rules. They should also have board minutes. So however it is normally voted, or however the board will make a decision to vote him as being the director as being furloughed, him or her, that you need to have minutes of that to back it up. Just think about it from the HMRC. It's not just a case of us just all sitting around having a chat and saying, you know what, I'm a director, I'll just furlough myself. You need to be able to demonstrate that to the HMRC. So document it, show that it's been approved by the board. When you're having it in writing, make sure it's clear, you've got evidence to back up when the furlough date starts. It's not when you say it is, it's when there's no work for you to do. But a director is slightly different because they can carry on with their statutory duties, whatever that means. So effectively, it's going to be things that will allow the business to keep going. You know, someone's still driving the ship forward. Administrative duties, AGMs, whatever duties you have as a director to make sure that business can still carry on, but doesn't revenue generate or do any work.
I think we will definitely look into this more for next time as well, Tosh, because I already had somebody asking, well, if it's statutory duties, where would a financial controller fall then? Because they're doing statutory VAT returns, they're doing PAYE, but, you know, they're doing the salaries, they're doing, you know, year end. So therefore, could this apply also for a financial controller? So I don't have the clarity on that yet. Would you be able to guide on that?
The guide is we don't try and squeeze everybody into the rules. We won't see what the rules are and see how that fits around the person. So in that person, if that is that person furloughed, if there's work for them to do and they're doing it, we have to pay them. What I have is I have, for example, lots of clients that are law firms, and the law firms that do employment law, surprise, but they have things in our industry, I mean, so like a COLP or a COFA, people that are designated to check certain systems in place or certain processes or certain things that are done correctly. Now, if they're not doing that work, well, then there's no issue of it. If they're a director, that's not a problem, because I would presume that would be part of their statutory duties. If they're not a director but they're an employee, then I'm going to suggest that you temporarily transfer those types of regulatory things that might be once a week, once a month, or whatever it is, to whoever the director is that is being designated as furloughed. Does that make sense?
It does. It's thinking what your business needs and doing it step by step in that format, and then furloughing those that are
correct.
superfluous.
Any employee that does any work will not be a furloughed employee.
Yeah.
A director can do work as long as they are their statutory duties only, not anything revenue generating for the business. That's the way to distinguish it.
Thank you. Right, we've got some questions around calculations. So, Posh, I'm going to do the response to that in the follow-up Q&A. It's calculating a percentage of what the furlough is. So we'll come back in the follow-up Q&As on that.
Okay.
There's also, Eric is also saying that he thought we could actually claim employers' NIC on top of the 2,500, but that's not the case. It has to be up.
No, it says plus. He's right. Eric is correct. It says 2,000. It's weird. It says 2,000 is 80% of all employment costs, and some of the wording says plus, and some of it says including. Let me do this. Let me double check that, and what we'll do is we'll answer that in the Q&A for sure.
Yeah.
I think you might be right, but let me double check it for you. Okay.
Okay. At the moment, I think it's 2,500 is the max, but we'll do in the follow-up in the Q&A.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So Charlene has Charlene's come back. She said, "What I meant was, can we as a firm get help with our rental costs for the serviced building?" Right, Charlene. So I'm going to talk, God, it's already 20 minutes in. This time does go quick. I'm going to be talking about some of the financial support. So hopefully we can give you an answer to that coming up shortly.
So are there any other questions on the first issues that we want to address now?
Coming in. We are enhancing furlough to pay the 100%, but we do have a few people whose contracts are due to end. So this is around temporary workers, which again has been a bit of a minefield, but more clarity is coming out. To help them out, we would like to extend them on, put them on furlough, but not to enhance their pay. Could they bring a discrimination claim?
Only if you are treating people differently on what is called a protected characteristic. Otherwise, no. It's got to be for that reason. Protected characteristic means sex, race, religion, age, disability, gender reassignment, sexual orientation, those sorts of things, right? You know those things. So as long as you're not picking and choosing how you treat people on that basis, that's fine. If somebody's going to raise that as an argument or in any way, Louise, then you just need to be clear what the reasoning is going to be that you're going to say why you made the decision you made. And obviously, assuming it's not because of any of the protected characteristics, you're fine. So just be able to back up what your reasoning is what I'm saying.
Okay. Right, we have quite a few more questions here. Shall we go into the next topic and then hopefully come back to these questions if we have time?
Absolutely. Follow up. This is an important one. And I know, look, we will get to all these questions and our contact details are also here. I mention this every single time. We're genuinely helpful people, nice people that want to put some help out there. You put your question to us on this forum or pass the word around, our contact numbers, our email addresses, and we will answer your question directly. So you don't need to just wait for every time we do a webinar if necessary, okay? Yeah. So so the next topic really was about the financing. What can businesses look at? And I thought, Meeta, I've been doing a lot of the talking on rights and all the rest of it in the legal position, but we need somebody who's actually practically dealing with the issues step by step. So tell us what you've come across that businesses can apply for and how do they do it?
Thank you, Tosh. Yeah, I mean, I sit here not only as an expert in the talent field, but also as an employer, as a business owner, and I face all the challenges that you as business leaders and people responsible for other people's salaries as well are facing. And it's a big responsibility. And the guidance from the government has been, it's actually come through, thick and fast. And it's been a relief that we aren't being ignored. I know, other countries in Europe are just not getting the support. America has given $1,000 to each member, each citizen, and that's it. So we definitely are getting a lot of support. And just to say, just hot off the press is the support that the government are giving charities. So £750 million has been allocated as grants for charities. And that is such a relief because, we have a not-for-profit sector main charity and we have our commercial side. And our not-for-profit clients were saying that, some run care homes, some run end-of-stage palliative care support places, and they didn't have the funds to keep going. So this is a real positive. So for all the charities out there, please do have a look online at the .gov.uk website about how you can access. But we will be putting more information out to you on that as well directly. We already know about the coronavirus job retention scheme. That's what we've been talking about with the furlough support. And again, I think it's really important, not just, Tosh and I, as Tosh has said, we want to help. But one thing I've really seen is that our advisors are, adapting what our needs are. And we are adapting what the needs are of our clients. So please don't be afraid to pick up the phone to your advisors and questions. Pick up the phone to us. We understand bringing new people in is down the line. Now it's about retaining and supporting and keeping the business going. HMRC are giving a lot of support in deferring VAT payments from the 20th of March onwards. And for directors or anyone on the self-assessment payment scheme, you won't have to pay that July payment until 2021. So that is a huge relief for directors and anyone who's in the self-assessment scheme. Also, the self-employment income support scheme is very similar to the furlough scheme, where if you have a tax return, you have to have submitted 3 years of tax returns, and your tax limit has to be limit has to be under £50,000. Is that right, Tosh?
Yeah. So basically, the self-employed profits must be at least £50,000 per annum.
At least or under? It's under.
Yeah. At least means, so that's the top. It says at least. Self-employed profits must be less than £50,000. Correct.
Yeah. So that is very similar. So there's been a lot of questions, and there was a zero rated question in here as well, actually, which might be relevant now. Let's have a look at it. I have some 0-hour workers. Easter is their busiest time of year. How do I calculate what their pay would be? Can you use the same period from last year? And so that would be using the sort of temporary workers who are now getting rights to be furloughed.
No, that particular one for 0 hours workers, they also can be furloughed. And the way you calculate their pay is one of two ways. You look at what they earned the same time last year, and based on that, or you look at their earnings over the last 12 months and you divide by 12 to figure out what the average monthly earning is. Whichever is the greater of the two is the figure you should go for.
Okay, thank you, Tosh.
Yep.
That's straightforward and helpful. Now, the other financial support that organisations can get out there is this business rates holiday. Now, initially, a few weeks back, the government said that was only for retail, hospitality, leisure and nursery businesses. But this is expanded out all the time. I know that the recruitment sector is now within that, and there will be other sectors that will qualify for this. And what that also means is that if you're a small business, you should also qualify for the grant funding of £10,000. If you're in receipt of the small business rate relief, you'll also be in receipt of the £10,000. So again,
it's an automatic payment, from what I understand, Meeta. It's an automatic payment, from what I understand. It doesn't even have to be applied for. But just check that it's been done. A lot of businesses are just getting £10,000 deposited into their account automatically because obviously they're on the system that for people that are paying for the business rate relief.
That's right. So if you qualify for that, it should be automatic. And something else that also is for businesses who have property which is rateable between £15,000 and £51,000, that grant actually goes up to £25,000. So again, that should expand to new sectors as things follow, as things evolve. So keep an eye out on which sectors are able to benefit from that grant. Then have the all-important CBILS, the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, and there's been a lot of articles on that at the moment. Apparently, only 1 in 8 applications are actually being authorised. So that is a challenge. This is not the government,
isn't it? And a loan from a bank is under terms that would normally be the case, maybe preferential interest rates, but the terms are the same. You've still got to be on a trajectory. You've still got to be on a profit, way to be making a profit to be able to pay that back. It's not free money. It's not a grant. This is a loan with the same criteria as it normally would be applied, just different interest rates, I think.
Yeah, and viability is the key criteria, really. But
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, viability is a grey, subjective word, and actually we're waiting for the government to create more guidance on that to help banks make the right decisions to support the business community. So again, let's watch this space, and we'll bring updates out to you as we get them.
The only thing that is, none of it's free, apart from maybe the scheme is a support mechanism, but most other things that we're talking about are either loans or they're calling them holidays, but they're deferred payments. They're not holidays that you just get written off. If you defer your mortgage for a few months, that doesn't mean you lose those months. It means they're just adding it on to the end. So just bear those things in mind, Yeah,
and also I would recommend from experience that a lot of landlords are considering holidays to rent and things like that. And I think for the lady asking about their serviced offices, I think is go back and ask for that holiday. As Tosh has pointed out, you're not necessarily going to be given funding to pay for that. They won't say just don't pay it, but it may give you some cash flow benefit of paying it further down the line when the business is back up and at full speed, you know?
The bottom line is ask your accountant. They will know all of the funding. You don't need to sit there trawling through the internet. You know, people like us are there to do that for you, to try and filter it down, but only within our bag. So if you're looking for more detail, we're telling you what's out there. Pick up the phone. Your accountant is definitely going to want to help you. Or if you can't, you don't have an accountant, you can't find somebody, then you reach out to us. We'll put you in touch with ours, and he'll happily help you. So you know, it's out there. The information's out there. Just make sure you do what you can do. You don't need to be just sinking under and just like, you know, what can I do? Well, find out. The information is out there, and people like us are there to sort of put that either in your face or help you, you know, assist you with that. Okay.
And the last support is the business interruption loan scheme for bigger organisations with turnover above 45 million. So that was the latest financial support headline that's come through. And again, that's all available. And something else I'm hearing as well is that the best place to start that with is with your bank that you bank with on a day-to-day basis. They are most likely going to be able to support you in access. So that's a bit of advice from getting some experience out there myself over the last few weeks.
Okay, so I guess we're on to the final topic, the grand finale. Dun, dun, dun. Really, it's what's the next steps. Actually, you know, normally we'll be saying, oh, we're waiting to the end of the month. We've now got some specific information. So the actual online portal, it will be usable from the 20th of April. That's what the government guidelines are saying. So the 20th of April, that's a week on Monday. And what they expect the first payments to be made under the scheme out by the 30th of April.
So for a business or an organisation that is sitting here today feeling, I've got cash flow issues, I'm not going to have the funds to pay my people, what does that mean for them?
There's two things. Number one, this is a reimbursement scheme initially, which means you pay your staff so they're not suffering in the interim if you can afford to. You claim back 80% up to a maximum of $2,500, right? That's one scenario. The second scenario, sorry, I lost my thread there. What was it you were saying earlier about the furlough?
Well, I was saying that many companies have cash flow challenges and paying before you get the money back.
Right. That's the second point. That's on track. So the second scenario is where they can't afford to maintain their staff. They've got no money coming in. So therefore, it can no longer be a reimbursement, but it can be a letting your staff know that they're furloughed and you'll still be claiming this money. Then it's a matter of submitting still the same information because it's based on salaries or as of the payroll on the 28th of Feb anyway, when presumably we were paying them. So they can still claim it. So we'll know what the information is. All we're doing at the moment is getting those things all ready for the HMRC. When we get the actual details of what that is, when the form is open on the 20th, well, then we've got the specifics. But at the moment, it's a furlough agreement. It's minutes from the board. It's anything to show why they were furloughed to back it up.
Okay, thank you. And so what I'd like to say is that as soon as we have eyes on that portal, we will come back with advice or set up some time.
What I need to say about that, Meeta, which is... So that's the first. So it's open on the 20th, and the first payments are out on the 30th. After that, the timeframes for getting reimbursements or your money is 4 to 6 working days. So 4 to 6, not 46. 4 to 6 working days from when the application is submitted online.
Okay.
So those are
reasonable. That's reasonable, isn't it? If it was any longer, again, I think organisations would be.
I think that's at a push, I would imagine. You know, if you're making an application to the HMRC to get it that quickly. So you know, the proof will be in the pudding, I suppose. Yeah.
I've got a question from Cecilia around the business interruption loan that I'd like to answer. So Cecilia says that my understanding is that the CBIL is a tax-free, i.e. the government pays the tax in the first year, then you will have to pay yourself. It is a loan, not a grant. In the first instance, you have to apply to your own bank. Please clarify. So yes, Cecilia, it is a loan. It's not a grant. Every penny has to be paid back. But what the government has said is that for the first 12 months, you as an organisation will not pay a penny. After that, we will have to start paying and paying for that. But what's quite interesting is that the government are allowing these CBILS to be 5 to 6 years in length. So what that should mean is that the repayments are affordable. So,
yes. But he's right. It's Cicero, and it's a loan. It's not free money.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Tosh, I jumped into your next steps information sharing there. Is there anything else that you feel?
No, I think the key thing is people want to know when is this happening. We know now. They say it's the 20th, as it say. So make sure you got all your information ready. You need to have all the information we've already told you to furlough your staff, right? You've got to have the agreement in place. You've got to have minutes voting that. You've got to be able to back up when the date of furlough was happening if they investigate. You know, when I say if, they're going to investigate. And who's going to be the target of the HMRC when we get through this? It's going to be small to medium-sized companies. It won't be the big companies, because it's more likely that it will be people suddenly putting their mother, their brother, their mate on the books after the 28th, or doing whatever other fraudulent activities that they're looking to find out about. So just make sure you've got the paperwork as much as you can to back up what you're saying. No work means we should be able to look into an employee email or inbox and see that they've not been actively using it, I presume, for the purposes of revenue generation.
Yeah, although something that we've been doing is setting up training, because anyone who's furloughed can still train and enhance their skill sets. And when they do come back to the organization, they bring so much more than they necessarily, went off with when they were furloughed. And that's something that can also really do some nice team building for your people that are furloughed alongside the people that are still working. Yes. Gillian has asked about, as a director of a limited company, I can only furlough myself for 80% of the £917 and not my dividend where she gets her main salary. And yes, that's absolutely correct, Gillian. You can only furlough yourself on your salary amount. And that's it. There's no more guidance on that. There's no more government.
Your duties are restricted to carrying out your statutory duties as a director only.
Yeah, that's right. So, Tosh, if you're okay, we have got a few more questions that I think we could answer. We just go for 2 or 3 more minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. 2 or 3 more. Of course.
Yeah. So Andy says that his employer is becoming incredibly difficult regarding furlough, redundancy, and it looks like they're going to be heading towards contacting ACAS and maybe even a potential tribunal. What is usually the time period for steps like this? More of a general question. I imagine it would be the same as if we weren't in this crisis. Tosh, what are your thoughts?
At the moment, the tribunals are only listening to certain types of hearings that can be conducted remotely, telephone, video conferencing, for obvious reasons. If it's a full hearing, I haven't seen a full hearing being done that way yet. That'll be quite tricky, but maybe that's the way of the future anyway. But the question is, what is the time frame? Well, it depends. You talked about different things there. So if you're talking about the time frame for there to be a redundancy process, that depends how many people are at risk of redundancy, because there are minimum consultation periods. 20 or more, it's a minimum of 30 days for them to consult with you. 100 or more, it's 45 days. If you're talking about the time frame for a tribunal case, typically we're looking at 6 to 12 months before this virus kicked off, for a preliminary hearing, which isn't even a final hearing. So you could be looking up to a year or 2 for it to be heard, the whole process. That's the sort of time frames. Not quite sure why they are the ones. It says like they will head towards me contacting ACAS. Well, I'm not sure what the problem is there, Andy, specifically. It looks like you've got a specific situation. Maybe give me a call. I'm available. My contact details will be at the end of this. But anyway, it's 0203 011 1601. Call me. I'll happily just talk you through whatever those details are. Okay. But that's it.
And we'll send the numbers on the links after the session as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you one more question from Deborah, who is talking about an administrator who's been furloughed. Here's a question. Hi, what about furloughing an administrator who has gone from 8 hours work a day to just 1 hour and their work does not revenue generate? So I imagine what we'd want to do there is transfer that work to somebody else, Tosh?
Yeah, if they're doing work, they're not furloughed. It can't be any clearer than that. If they are doing their work, then it is not furloughed. I appreciate we were talking about revenue generation, but the issue for the revenue generation was really more of a specificity for the director. Director can only do his statutory duties and obviously do whatever is necessary to keep the business alive, but not revenue generation. Presumably they won't be furloughed. They'll do some work, won't they, generally speaking, as directors. For the administrator, if they're working down to 1 hour, you either redistribute that and furlough them because they're not enough, or you make them redundant. or you pay them, or they agree to a reduced wage. Why would they agree when they can get 80% and her 8-hour a day job is redundant? It's only the 1 hour a day job that's there.
And then that benefits you as an organisation and from the grants that the government are giving, which I think is really key for everyone to look at their business holistically and think about how you can get the support to see us through this really difficult time.
You know, I'm not advocating chopping heads or being mean. I'm talking about what your options are as a business. And the bottom line is, again, if they're less than 2 years, you have a lot more options. If they don't want to do what you want them to do, then you can terminate their employment with notice. If they're more than 2 years, you still have some legal hurdles you need to go through to avoid a penalty of a year's pay or discrimination. Call us. Don't make any mistakes. Just give us a call. There's no obligation.
All right. Thank you, Tosh. We have run out of time today. What I would ask everyone, just while we're winding this up in the next 10 seconds, is if there's any topics that you'd like us to cover, please put it in the comments. Tosh and I are doing the 4th in this series of Q&A sessions next Friday. That's the 17th of April at 1 p.m. We will be recording a Q&A session after this, going over any questions that you might have. And we just thank you for your time, and we hope that this guidance has helped you with the burdens that are facing everyone in this difficult time.
So what will follow next will be a video, I think we've answered most of them, but if we have missed any, we'll cover that with a follow-up video, which we'll do straight after this and send out to you. And we'll see you again next Friday, 17th of April at 1 p.m. Thanks very much for listening, and I hope it was helpful.
Thank you all. Thanks, Tosh.